We are continuing with concrete, and this is forming curbs and gutters that you find on streets, parking lots, and so forth. So again, there's many ways we use concrete, and um, we know most curbs they will use concrete because it's very durable, can be formed very easily, and again, it can handle the stress of cars and trucks driving over it. Objective of this section is that you should be able to explain the construct uh, of curbs and gutters. Therefore, you should be able to explain how to read site plans and establish the grade and subbase. Should be able to explain how to construct curbs and gutter forms, explain how to place, finish, and cure concrete curbs and gutters, and describe slip forming and how it's used to construct curbs. We will do some things with the concrete and to lay out certain things. So there will be a performance test we will be doing also. So here we're going to talk about different types of curbs and gutters. And the main type is a barrier type curb. And a barrier meaning that it's designed to keep cars from driving over it. Um, and the other type, the mountable type, is a curb that's designed to allow traffic to go over the curb without damaging the curb. A barrier is trying to keep someone out. So these are some typical designs you will find for curbs. And again, most streets will be uh, based on one of these, unless it's a barrier. A barrier is like could be built up to could be a post, it could be a column, it could be something that is used to keep uh, cars from driving over. So reading plans and establishing a grade. Okay, in other words, by taking the plans, we know we're putting the curbs in the right height and in the right position. So a site drawing combined with civil plan sheets provide an accurate description of the existing and planned conditions. So again, the plans would show what it is and what it should be. In other words, they would give you the topical dimensions of where the curves need to be installed on the landscape. So craft workers working on the curb and gutters must interpret these drawings to ensure that the curb is formed and placed to the proper elevation with the correct alignment to the paved areas. And that would be pretty bad when you set the curb spin at the time and it's not lining up with the street. So typically the curbs go as in first and then they pave. So this is some of the information you'll find where about the cut sheets, the sheets, the submittal sheets for the curves, and you can see some things talking about the description, the offset, the station. Now some of these is actually from um, the survey equipment, what is designed to um, uh, of this position, and it changes in that position. So again, because you know the ground will never be completely level, and sometimes you have to go uphill, downhill, and take dips and things. So all that would be planned out of how the curves and the will be located. So again, when we looking at how we set this, there would be plans. So there's no mistakes of how the these curbs and barriers will be mounted. So the first thing you're going to do before we pour anything, you're going to establish the grade and preparing the sub base. The sub base, just like you preparing any other type of things that are going to have support, because of the weight of the concrete, you don't want the curbs or the gutters settling, cracking, falling out of position just because the ground wasn't prepared correctly. So, like we do with sidewalks or a garage floor, by compacting it, putting aggregate down, um, putting a solid base so the ground can support the weight of the curbs. So all corners should have a grade stake at the beginning, at the end of the radius, as well one or more grade stakes between those 2 points. It all depends on the radius and how large the curve will be. So again, to know where you start and somewhere in the middle uh, where it's going to be laid out. So the if you look at this, this is the grade here, the ground. This is probably the pavement in this area here, and this is the curb. And the curb, again, need to have certain points where you can see it. So again, this is the back of the curb. This is the flow area of the flow line where water will be going to the gutters. And of course, the lip of the curb that is built out, that is um, adjacent or touching the pavement, even if it's asphalt or concrete. That curb will make the connection at that point. There will usually be some type of expansion joints a lot of times for movement, especially when there's different materials being used. But a lot of time asphalt, it's pretty flexible because of they use materials between the aggregate to that can give somewhat. Slip forming basically is a mechanical paver for like highways and large sites. They would have a machine that actually forms the curb to make it well. It could do it faster, easier um, to build curbs. So again, like parking lots or a company that does a lot of parking lots or building highways, this is certainly something they would have um, to form the curbs and gutters. So slip forming uses a mechanical paver that places the formed concrete on the move by sliding the form or the template along the surface and shaping the concrete into a specific pattern. Okay, the forms can be like any other type of forms. It can be certainly metal, it could be plastic, it could be wood. Metal forms, because it can be used over and over and over, is very durable. Um, but again, like it says here, it's heavy because it's metal. Plastic forms are easier to work with and much easier and lightweight. And plus, plastic things doesn't adhere to it. The concrete not going to stick to it as well. And wood forms are used where only small sections of curbs and gutters are to be placed. So when it's a very large, they're going to be something else besides wood, because to build the forms itself is going to take a lot of time. Of course, you're going to have to use some type of release agent on the wood so the concrete doesn't stick to the wood, to the forms. So that's things to consider when you are building curbs. So laying out and setting forms. Number one, establish the grade, the level, and alignment of the curb. This should have been done by the surveyor and marked with the proper stakes and hubs. Lay out the face of the back of the form. Establish the top of the curb elevation. Run a string line between each one of the established back of the curb height along its length. And number five, after all the stakes are set and strung, nil and sight along the string. And so, in other words, making sure that everything is level. And so, when you start to pour the concrete, there won't be no mistakes of where things should be placed. Number 6, to make the bottom of the curb, the gutter conform to the proper grade. Some hand grading may be necessary on the subgrade. And so the subgrade is the base. It's what you're putting down, what's been compacted. It could be sand and with aggregate on top of that. So after the line is set and the grade trimmed, check that the form are clean, straight, and treated with a form release agent. Uh, then number 8 says set the first back form plumb to the line, and then one craft worker can continue to set the back while another follows behind, dropping in the mistakes that's there, and then driving them to the proper depth. So again, once you get it started, 2 guys can be running the curbs. I'm going to see if I can find a video that's showing how to set curbs and build them as we go through, so you can witness to see the proper ways to do that. Number 10. Once all the back forms have been placed and aligned, position the division plates and gutter form. The division plates create needed joints in the curb and gutters. And here's the most important thing, because it can, the stress of the expansion and contraction based on temperature of the ground and outdoor temperature can cause it to crack. And you can put these preformed divisions in it to so it can control where it will crack. Number 11 is set the face form over the division plate and lock into place. Drive additional stakes on the outside of the face form. Once the forms have been placed, it is important to check and correct the grade at the bottom of the form. And because you don't want to be adding any more concrete or concrete leaking paths, and where there could be a void where the form is at. So making sure the ground is level and graded out correctly. Number 13, before placing any concrete, inspect the form to be sure there is no dirt or foreign materials stuck in the inside that will ruin the surface of the finish. Then treat the form with the proper release agent. Tying into other structures, curb and gutter may have to be tied into other structures such as retaining walls, medium barriers, or a bridge abatements. So again, to tie it in, you need to consider that, how you're going to be connected. So number 1, that it will look right and function correctly, because curves are designed to help guide water into certain areas. And if there's not, you can lose, you have runoff of soil, you can have many other things that can cause issues. So when tying into other structures, careful attention to alignment of the grade is essential, or the curb and the gutter will not fit into the proper position. So therefore, isolation joints are usually constructed between the curbing and the adjacent structure. It's because they are 2 different pieces, and it can expand and contract. They can cause damage to the curbs or to the structure from that movement, that slight movement of the curb or the structure. So making sure that isolation joints is added between it. So curb and gutter placement, finishing and curing. This is a picture of them building out a curb. You can see the forms that is used. It's a small sections that tie into existing structures can be placed by hand. Large jobs are placed directly into the form and from the truck or the mixer. So again, deposit concrete as close as possible to his position, to his original position. So again, you can see where they are adding the concrete right there in the form and setting it. They're going to screed it and float it out and so forth. Proper slump is very important. Remember what slump is. It is the consistency of concrete. So when it's too wet, it's too runny, and will not hold a shape. And so making the right slump. So when it comes to curbs, you want to slump something around 3 to 3.5, which is fairly dry. Um, Doing it like a sidewalk or you may want it, of course, higher, 6 or 7. So slump has a direct relationship on the quality of the finished surface. Using a shovel, fill the gutter first, then fill the curb. Use the shovel to eliminate honeycombs and aid in consolidation. The method of consolidation depends on the type of curb built. And here's, you can see what they're doing. They get um, a template that right here. Let me just use this laser. This is a template. And they're just running this to actually have that form. So it fits on this part of the form and it fits on that part of the form, on the back side of it. So they're using this to actually screed it out. And because it's a 3 to 3.5 slump, it will hold its shape very well. And then they can come back and continue to discrete it. So again, this template is actually to give it its design, its shape, and then coming back with the screed to smooth it out. And they will put a division plate a certain amount of distance apart, so it have a point where it can expand and contract. So there's many factors considered in determining when forms should be removed. Slump of the concrete mix used, required structural strength of the concrete, finishing requirements and the need to access the curved faces, planned curing and protection procedures, and of course, considering considerations of the form reused. So when we removing the forms, you got to make sure it's cured. You don't want to remove it too soon, where it can be damaged. Um, Again, you want to make sure that the curb has release agent, so you can remove it very easily without damaging the concrete or wasting a lot of time too. So barrier curbs and gutter finishing. Use the inside of the curb edge on the inside edge of the curb. So again, use the inside curb edge on the inside edge of the curb. Number 2, use the outside curb edger on the outside edge of the curb. Okay, so again, I kind of went over that using the inside. I could where you saw that form. That form is basically giving you the shape of that curb or the gutter. And so once you set it in place, resting on the top and resting on the bottom of that of the form, um, you will be able to use it to, like I say, design that shape that you're looking to have. So use a small float to float the top of the surface of the curb and to work out any edger marks. So number 4, The correct time to strip the face of the form depends on the weather conditions and other factors. If it's very hot outside, or if it's cold outside, or if it's raining, many times you have to cover it. Matter of fact, if it's you need it to cure and give it time to cure, many times to slow down the curing process, they would keep some of the moisture in by covering it with plastic to keep the moisture from evaporating, especially when it's very warm outdoors. Um, but the plastic can be used also if it's raining. So again, keeping humidity and time to cure concrete is everything. Temperature and time. Number 5, another craft worker falls behind those removing the forms to float the curved face. So because it is, remember, because of um, the stiffness of the concrete, you can take it off, but now you can clean it up also and take care of any imperfections. Number 6, after the face form is removed, unlock any remaining fasteners on the division plates, then pull them out. Edge both sides of the curb again. Finish the outside face of the curb. Do not trowel the surface unless specified. Usually the curb is pretty a rough surface. Or I just say rough, but it is a surface that uh, typically not very smooth. So again, for reasons for traction and things. So use a hand float to float the curb lengthwise. Move the float in a saw-like motion. Number 2, use an edger to edge inside all forms, expansion joints, and division plates. Pull the divider plates up and out of the concrete after the plates have been edged and as soon as the concrete is hard enough. Float out all edge marks using so use a finish brush or a broom to finish off the gutter to put that surface on it. So that is really important when you are using a broom to put that finish on. Curing. So a membrane forming liquid curing compounds are popular. Um, so in hot weather, white pigment compounds are best used to reflect some of the heat away. And I don't know if you've ever seen that before. Maybe I could do a video on that or show a video. Is that they're using that white powder that they spray on, or sometimes might be a liquid, a water, and they would spray on it when it's hot. And basically it gives a lighter color, not to color it, but just to reflect the sun away so it doesn't overheat the concrete. So the darker the concrete, the more heat it can absorb. The more heat it absorbs, the faster it would evaporate. So again, to allow it to cure. In cold weather, when it is possibility of sub-freezing weather during the 72 hours following the placement, some form of insulation should be used to help hold in some of the heat. Um, Again, I've seen them putting just about anything over sometime. It might be burlap sacks. Certainly you can use things like straw um, because if it starts to break down, concrete itself, as it's curing, it generates some heat. But you want to make sure that it stay above a certain temperature so it can cure correctly. Curved slip forming, again, eliminates the need for forms because the machine itself is the form. It makes the concrete in the shape you want it and produces excellent results with minimal finishing efforts. Many different models are available, varying in size, production speed, and versatility. So again, that machine can really put out curves very quickly. Streamline guidance. Sensors, and this is especially used in concrete work on highways. Sensors on the machine follow the string line to manage the vertical and the horizontal positions of and send information to the control system. The system processes the inputs and activate the hydraulic lifting and adjustment of the machine. So again, when you see a machine like this on a highway, the thing is automated. And yes, they would have a string on the side where that string is at exactly the level they want it, and the machine would just read it and it cause the machine to adjust itself as it moving forward, as it laying the concrete and and finishing the concrete. Control systems. Digital guidance work in conjunction with an optical system that includes a total station and a prism. Now, that total station is what, in the very beginning, when we talked about this survey of this lesson here, we was talking about what you would use to follow the information on that chart. It would give you those total station points, and this machine basically is like a transom, but it's an electronic device that will really give a lot of information that can be used for making sure that things are laid out correctly at the correct grade. So digital guidance work in conjunction with an optical system that includes a total station and a prism. Input is constantly compared to the 3D model and result in inputs and control of the steering and elevation of the slip former. Alrighty, let's talk about some terms. Barrier curbs is curbs with significant height to stop automobiles from easily crossing over them without suffering damage, especially at speeds. Barrier curbs are generally 6 inches high at the minimum. Downtown Chicago, in certain places, you see these type of barrier curbs all the time. If you ever go close to the financial district, you see them all over the place in Chicago. But when might be a grocery store that will build a barrier curb. It's high, so a car cannot just drive up on the curb and go through a window or the wall. So it would be 6 to 8 inches high, um, sometimes even higher, 7 inches, where somebody could step up, but a car, it would end up damaging a car if it actually tried to go through it. Flow line. In a curb and gutter system, the point where the sloped or flat gutter meets the vertical curb where water will collect and flow. So in other words, right there, basically a flow line is the corner of a curb, the inside corner of a curb. Front lip, the edge of the gutter placement to the pavement. So basically that's the front of the curb that's touching the street. Mountable curves, shorter and or slope curves that an automobile can ascend without suffering damage. A prism is a special reflective target used with optical layout devices to determine its position. Stations, a reference point used in surveying, often a mark along the alignment or grade placed every 100 feet. Summits, the highest elevation of a structure, including roadways that typically have a summit that is of the center, causing water to flow off the road toward the edge, and also referred to as a crown. A total station is an electronic optical tool used by surveyors, engineers, and heavy equipment operators that incorporate a transom with an electronic distance meter to determine positions and elevations. Total stations uses microprocessors to collect and analyze and returns from the target prism, and then share the information via um, wired or wireless signals. So we do have total stations here at the school. It's an expensive piece of equipment that we use for surveying. All right, let's do some questions. The offset distance from each hub to the back of a curve should be a minimum of blank. Is it 6 inches, 1 foot, 2 feet, 5 feet? The answer is 2 feet. Is the offset distance from each hub to the back of the curve. Site-built wooden forms can generally be placed much faster than reusable metal forms. That is certainly false. False. Those reusable forms are designed for that purpose to speed up the process, to get things done without a lot of assembly compared to a wooden form. The most common method for curing curb and gutter when the outdoor temperature is 40 to 80 degrees is to blank. Is it to lay down wet burlap covering with re-wetting, lay down quilting curing blankets with re-wetting, apply a membrane forming liquid curing compound, or lay polyethylene sheeting over the concrete? The answer is C. Apply a membrane forming liquid curing compound. Total stations and prisms used for slip formers guidance are blank. Is it a mechanical device, optical device, olfactory device, proximity sensor device? They are certainly optical. You actually look through it, and then you use the prism to set your points